Hello, I'm Michael Voris.
And I'm Father Pablo, Catholic missionary priest. We really want you to watch every week the one true faith. Had you left that one true faith, please come home. We're waiting for you because we love you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The One True Faith, the show that we say is the most disturbing hour on television because we talk about eternity. And our topic for this season is one that's actually very disturbing. We're talking about the occult for the entire season, 13 episodes. And various forms of occultism, and there are many, are coming back into fashion again, and they're becoming extremely popular, particularly with the young, with young people who simply don't know, have never been exposed to what the dangers of the black arts can hold, what kind of dangers they can hold. The black arts themselves hold a certain appeal and have for centuries and millennia because of what it is they offer to people. They offer knowledge, power, control, superiority. That's why people get involved with the black arts, because all of those things are supposed to come from it. These things appeal to our darker sides, to have power and control over everything around us. As a matter of fact, these very qualities are the qualities that our blessed Lord laid aside. They're qualities that belong to Him in His divinity. Power, control, omniscience. He laid those aside when He took on flesh and became human. As St. Paul says, He humbled Himself. And as the Christmas carol, one of my favorites, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, the third verse says, mild He lays His glory by. So our blessed Lord took these certain powers, which were His by nature, and simply laid them aside. So for humans to want to grasp at these things is sort of the inverse of being God, of trying to imitate the divine. The occult appeals to people who are psychologically immature. Click, 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 click. Did you hear all those remotes just going off there? Well, I'm about to insult another group also in the next, but they do. The people who are psychologically immature grasp for things that offer something that they really can't give you. That's sort of a definition of what immaturity is. So for this reason, it holds sort of a special sway. The occult holds a special sway over the youth who are still developing, hopefully, developing into their maturity, their psychological maturity. Young people are still in the process of finding their way. That's kind of what definition of what young is. They're stumbling around a bit. They're trying to get their sea legs. They're trying to establish all sorts of relationships, understand themselves, understand the world around them, how they fit into the world, how the world relates to them, all these things about being young. This makes them vulnerable. It makes young people vulnerable. And I don't mean just young 12, 13-year-olds. I also mean young adults. Makes them vulnerable to certain messages and things that come to them. So all of those people who've sort of progressed beyond that stage can look back on it and remember, maybe not so fondly, what a struggle it was to get to those certain points of your life where you can now begin to see the world around you in a more clear fashion. When you're young, self-identity is the major issue. It's sort of what preoccupies your mind. Self-discovery can be somewhat troubling. You're younger and you look around and you say, how come my friends don't like me? What did I just say? And you cogitate on this stuff and it ruins your day, it ruins your week. You can't sit and study for math because you're worried what that cute girl over there thinks of you or that guy over there. Well, what's going on? Or, God, he's not a better athlete than me. These things consume you when you're young. Maybe they consume you a little bit when you're older too, but not quite as much. Questions about friends and relationships. These things are hard to answer. So as you sort of take a look at the world around you when you're younger, what's the goal? The goal is to be accepted, to be understood and to be accepted. Now that, of course, carries through to our adult lives as well, but it has sort of a special poignancy when we're younger. The last thing a young person wants to be is singled out for something inferior. like their clothes or their appearance or their mannerisms or their lack of athletic ability or a whole host of things. Kids want to fit in. They want to fit in. They don't want to be singled out and marginalized because something is weird about them or something different. However, something which elevates a young person to a much higher status among their peers, they will take that kind of singling out. That's important. So if you happen to have great athletic skill, no kid sitting on the football team who's some starter in high school, starting quarterback who's going to play for Notre Dame next year or Southern Cal or something like that, no kid is embarrassed by that. They walk around with it. They feel superior to their peers, and their peers treat them that way. If they have rich parents, well, generally other kids know that. If they're great looking, or they have the best clothes or the best video games, all these kinds of things, whatever makes you popular, that's what kids want. They want to be accepted and they want to be praised by their peers. So, as we know, this doesn't stop at childhood either. Take a look at some cars that people drive. So when something comes along and presents itself to youth that holds out the promise of making this person unique, of making this young person unique, giving them certain powers, kids gravitate to that. The young-minded gravitate to that. This psychology helps explain the draw of fantasy. That's why people like to get involved in fantasy, because why? It gives them a certain control. It removes them from the difficult reality, the difficult situation, and puts them in a situation where they can kind of manipulate things. And their imaginations start to be able to take control. This becomes kind of a spiritual desire, a desire of the soul where I want to be able to control things. This is a kind of a turning away from God. I want to have control. God, I'm not trusting you. And this is what begins to be played out in the occult. Things of the occult offer a fantasy because they offer power and knowledge that other people don't have. I'm a witch. I practice this. I have control over people. I can cast spells. I have a book of spells here and I can control my environment. That's an appeal to a weakness in the soul. It's a turning away from God and a turning to something to seize power and control over someone else. This is why so many TV shows and movies and books that deal with the occult have such an attraction to young people. And it's why they're marketed to young people, because the people who produce these things know that they've got sort of a fertile field when it comes to people who are younger. Pope Benedict actually talked about this when he was still Cardinal Ratzinger. There was a situation where somebody had written, a fellow in Germany, a lady in Germany had written a review of the Harry Potter novels, and somebody at the Vatican, somebody at the Vatican had misspoken and said that the Vatican actually approved of the Harry Potter novels. While he was still Cardinal Ratzinger, he wrote a letter to this German author who'd written these books, and in that letter he said that the stories of Harry Potter have in them subtle seductions. This is a quote. They have subtle seductions which act unnoticed and by this deeply distort Christianity in the soul before it can properly grow. That's what Cardinal Ratzinger said. Now, he was talking specific about the Harry Potter things, but he was talking in general about the whole idea of the occult and the way it's packaged up and presented to young people. His comments actually reveal kind of a depth of his discernment of what troubles the human soul today. It's a lack of control. It's a feeling like they don't control, that I don't know where my place is in the universe. That goes back to a trust level, and when you look at that, locate that trust issue in children, it becomes greater, much greater. Adults can kind of look around at their life experience and say, well, I remember this time and it didn't seem like things were in control, but it kind of worked out. And this was a horrible situation, but in the end, it kind of worked out for the good. Well, kids don't have that perspective. And so when something comes along and presents itself as giving them control, they gravitate to it. The youth are vulnerable, and this is what Benedict was talking about when he was still Cardinal Ratzinger. Perhaps no other time in history, as a matter of fact, at least in Western civilization, have so many kids grown up with so little direction. The natural desires of belonging and wanting to be accepted can easily follow down a darker path of sex and drugs and alcohol. And the culture now provides a vast array of these sorts of things, these things you can move down. You can, 75, 100 years ago, you couldn't really easily get lost when you were 10, 12, 14 in sex and drugs and alcohol. Society wasn't formulated like that. Today it is. Today it is. Half the children being raised in one parent households, both parents out working, all of these things available to you as a child, as a small adult. And all of a sudden, your whole world starts to become destabilized. And what's scattered all over the entertainment industry appeals to the occult. Some of them direct, some of them indirect, some of them subtle, some of them not so subtle. The occult is presented as a viable path to help you feel like you have control in a world where everything seems like it's going out of control. As a matter of fact, the occult may actually be more dangerous because it's more subtle and more insidious when it comes to the youth. The occult holds out the promise not just of being accepted, but it holds out the promise of being superior. If you're going to be a drug addict, well, you're going to be a drug addict with everybody else on the street corner down there on Skid Row. But when it comes to the occult, what's the promise? That you have control over other people. What's at the heart, after all, of not being accepted is a feeling of powerlessness, right? That's what it is. I don't feel like I have any power. I don't have any friends. I can't do things. I can't do this. I can't do that. But if all of a sudden I begin to develop this sense of myself of having control and power over people, that powerlessness I feel in my daily life all of a sudden gets replaced with a sense of, now I do have power. I do have power. And the source of that power is evil. The source of the power is evil. On some level, the entertainment industry has sort of tapped into this. It makes this appeal to that sense of powerlessness people have. There are multiple television shows featuring witches. Most of them are teenage witches who are very hip and cool, and they got it going on. They know everything. They've got control of everything. And who are these shows marketed to? They're not marketed to people in their 40s. They're marketed to people in their teens and their 20s. They look very hip. They look very cool. Everything's in cool theme songs, and they have total control because of their magic. When you couple this with very, very slick production techniques where people disappear and reappear and all kinds of, all the different production techniques, this all of a sudden looks very appealing. This fantasy world you look at on television looks very appealing, particularly if you're vulnerable because you don't feel like you have a sense of power. That's what's going on in the entertainment industry. That's what's going on with trying to appeal to young people. That's why there's so many of these shows. Every time you get done, one runs out, another one starts. At the heart of the occult is a turning away from God. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. That's what makes it so dangerous, that you are taking control and you don't need God. This is why the church has always warned about this. This is why God says this, and it's repeatedly throughout scriptures. Have nothing to do with sorcery, divination, etc. Even says in the book of Revelation, anyone engaging in this, their lot is in the burning pool of fire. It mentions it specifically, sorcery. So, without reference to God in your life, who decides what's good and evil? If there is no God, who decides what's good and evil? Well, you do. Satan answered that for us in the Garden of Eden. Here, have an apple or have a fruit. Eat the fruit, and your eyes will be opened, and you will be like gods, knowing good and evil. Knowing good and evil. See, Satan knows our psychology. He knows what we want, and he plays on it. And the occult has been around for millennia and millennia because it holds that appeal. I can control my situation. Actually, when he says you will know good and evil, it's more than just knowing it intellectually. It's actually setting the agenda, that you know good and evil so comfortably that you actually control and decide for yourself what's good and evil. It's not just looking at a book and understanding, oh, this is good and that's bad. It's you choosing and you setting the agenda of what's good and evil. See, there is within man a spirit of rebellion, and we all know this. Spirit of rebellion against God. Not just rebellion for its own sake, but rebellion against God and against truth. And this is always alive within us. That's why so many of the saints longed to die, not because they hated life, but they wanted to have this aspect of them gone so that they could be always united to God and in love, and all of this other horrible stuff of life, of human nature, of fallen human nature, finally eradicated from them. They wanted to be with God. When something feeds this spirit of rebellion, this spirit gets stronger. It grows. It reaches out. It has an insatiable appetite, and it wants to keep grabbing and grabbing. It can never be satisfied. It can never be satisfied. Trying to bring this spirit to heal and subdue it and crush it is the goal of the Catholic life, of the Christian life. This is what it is. We can't fix this within ourselves. See, the truth of Christ is rejected by the world precisely because to accept it puts you at war with yourself. Now, truth be told, we are at war with ourselves. But when you stare yourself in the mirror and look at yourself and know that I am this, you look totally truthfully and humbly at yourself, look in the mirror the way a good follower of Christ does, you're at war with yourself. And you are until the day you die. Sometimes the war is raging, sometimes the battles are a little less, raging, but they're always raging. They're always raging. And people who look to Christ as their model know this, and they live it. Other people don't have the courage to live like that. They want to run. They want to run from the battle. They want to run and pursue whatever they can. They turn to the occult because they want to control their circumstances. It's the whole point of the occult. The occult holds an appeal, particularly for the youth, because at the precise moment they are the most desirous of power and control. This is the time it's the most appealing to them. Again, you get older, you realize, you get knocked around by life a little bit. You're like, I don't have as much control as what I think I do. You're 20, you own the world. You own the world. Nothing can knock me off my stride. I own the world. And boy, if I can get some power and control things, hey, right on. It doesn't work like that. You get 40, whatever, that's not true. You're 20, you own the world. So this is why TV shows and movies about powers of immortality and sorcery and everything hold such great appeal for the youth. It plays right to their psychology. So this isn't to condemn fantasy stories that are presented like Lord of the Rings or the Narnia series. Not at all. As a matter of fact, those stories deal with those very issues, those psychological yearnings and that deep longing. Those stories' plot lines are built around that. Look at the heroes in those stories. They're weak. And they go off on this journey, and they don't control it, and someone else has to help them through their situation. Unlike the Harry Potter series, for example, or any of these shows where the person has all the power and they just solve everything themselves. While they both are kind of dealing in the realm of magic or the occult, one looks at it and says, it's not the center stage. It's not, my magical powers aren't going to solve my problem. Over here, Harry Potter is going to, the whole story's built around him having all this power and growing in it and learning how to manipulate his universe around him. It's two different approaches to this. So things like Lord of the Rings and the Narnia series show these struggles, and they show what you have to do and that you have to overcome these struggles to become the hero. At the end of the show, you become the hero in spite of your difficulties, or rather because of your difficulties. In things like Harry Potter and these teenage witch shows and all this, you're already the hero because you possess the power within yourself to be the hero. It's two entirely different philosophies at work there. So they admit of sort of an objective morality and an order, the Lord of the Rings shows, for example, they admit of an objective morality and an order that you must conform to. They freely admit the struggle, They show the struggle going on. Remember there's a scene in Lord of the Rings there where Frodo puts on the ring and he wants to keep it on. And the ring is evil. And he has this struggle and he doesn't know what he should do and he likes it but he doesn't. Well, that's an honest treatment. It's an honest treatment. We all see that. Evil has an appeal to us because of the original sin and its effects. But he overcomes the evil with the help of the people around him. Not so with some of these other shows. So you have to be very discerning as a parent what your kids are looking at. And kids need to understand what it is they're looking at. And they need to understand that with your help and your guidance. It's the fantasies that take a different approach, that things come at from a sort of a different worldview, that you have all of this power within you, and those are the things that are dangerous. Those are the shows and the books and the novels and the movies and the TV shows that present a real danger to people. That's why so many of today's movies and TV shows that involve magic and the occult have sort of such an air of desperation about them. Look at some of these things. There's always a dark thing in these movies, and it's always dark. They're shot dark. Their characters are dark looking. I don't mean dark skinned. I mean they're dark. There's like a darkness around them in these ones because the appeal is that there's something dark. There's an attachment in there that draws you in, and it's evil. It's evil. That's the point. You never really get the sense in any of these kinds of shows and movies that evil's ever really fully vanquished. When you go to Lord of the Rings, for example, he throws that ring in the fire and boom, it melts and the whole bit, and evil is conquered. You don't get that in a lot of movies and TV shows today. Maybe that's because they want to make a sequel, but make up some other horrible character. But you never get the sense that evil's ever finally vanquished. It always is kind of lurking around. So magic itself is treated very differently in the entertainment industry, for example. Remember the old show Bewitched? Remember Bewitched, Elizabeth Montgomery and Darren and Endora and all those? And Elizabeth Montgomery plays your average, everyday suburban housewife witch. She's kind of hanging around. But, see, in that case, magic was never presented as the solution to the problem. As a matter of fact, it was kind of the use of magic, the accidental use of magic, that became kind of the problem in the show. Endora would show up and cast some stupid spell, and the whole next 20 minutes of the show was trying to somehow undo this bad use of magic. And everybody kind of got that. When Samantha messed up, the whole point of the show was to spend the rest of the time fixing what her powers had messed up. Again, if Endora rolled up, that was always a different story. Darren always loved Endora showing up. Same was true of I Dream of Jeannie, right? There's Jeannie. Oh yes, master. Doing, doing, all over the place. And every time she doing, doing, everything would screw up, mess up, and you'd look at it and go, okay, now the whole rest of the show is how to undo what she's just done. She's just turned Major Nelson into a refrigerator, and she can't figure out how to doing him back to reality. So, but today in the media, magic is not presented as the problem that needs to be solved. It's presented as the solution. And the people who are the heroes possess this power, and they possess this knowledge and all of this strength, and they're in control. It's an entirely different way of viewing things. So the appeal is never to something outside of themselves or to a higher order. The appeal is always that you have the power, you have the control, you fix it, and it's this touchstone to the occult. Occultist powers that make you special. They make you special, all right, but not in the way you're thinking. God never figures into this. Look at a lot of these shows, a lot of these teenage witch shows, the vampire show, all these things. Where are the parents? Where's the figure? Where's the mother figure? Where's the father figure? They're not there. Why? You don't need them. I'm in control. They're never around. They're never around. Or if they are there, they're just there kind of in the background and they're not ever really mentioned. Psychologically, this sets the stage for the youth to be thinking in terms of self-determination, self-control. They don't need the guidance. This is exactly the whole point of the occult, that you are the one who determines what is best. You set the agenda. This is why it's so dangerous. Now, when we come back, how the young need to respond in truth to the occult. We'll be right back right after this. At the heart of the occult, what the occult does, the reason it's so seductive, is it allows its followers to live in a fantasy world. And that's what it is, where they think they're in control. It substitutes the truth for a lie. Followers of Christ know. We know that we aren't really in control of anything except our own free will. That's it. Nothing else are we in control of. I laugh lots of times when I see interviews with people like Donald Trump or whatever, not to pick on, the Donald, but whoever, and they're always like, well, I built this and I did that and I raised myself up by my bootstraps and whatever, and there's just such an arrogance about the whole thing. There's such an arrogance. If God would have allowed a cell or a gene or something to shift the other way while you were in the womb, you may have been born horribly handicapped, or you may have been born mentally retarded or something else. You aren't in control of anything except your choices. You could be driving down the street, Donald, and one of your buildings fall on you. You're never in control. We're only in control of our own free will, that's it. But the occult, what does it say? All the occult practices, and it doesn't matter what it is, Ouija boards or tarot cards or crystal balls or talking to the spirits or whatever you think it is, it gives you the impression that you're in control. I'm going to cast a spell on you. Ooh, I'm going to ruin your life. Ooh, no, you're not. You're going to look like an idiot mixing a bunch of dead leaves together with, dead insects and stuff and shaking it up in a bottle and throwing it on them. Hopefully they'll sue you. Divine providence directs history, all of history, including our personal histories. Our eternal lives depend on how we cooperate with that and conform ourselves to that providence. That's it. That's all it is. We have no more control than that. What we do with our own free will, end of story. We never know when we wake up tomorrow that we're not going to be diagnosed with something, that the person we love the most is going to be dead, that some horrible thing will have happened to our jobs, our houses, anything. We do not know and we cannot control it. And the occult gives the impression that you can. That's the big lie of it. Humans have control over nothing more than what we need control over. That's the way Almighty God made us. That's the situation He put us into. So this is a truth of Christianity. That's all. We only have control over what we need and nothing else. So coming to accept this is the path to heaven. This is the path to heaven. Rejecting it is the path to hell. Jesus says, unless you become like little children, you will not see the kingdom of God. What do little children do? They trust. They trust. They look at you, mommy, daddy, uncle, whoever, and they trust. And they trust that they just look up at you with those big eyes, and when you say, yes, some big, huge, fat man's going to come down the chimney and drop presents under the tree, and he's going to hop on his magical sleigh and have 8 reindeer, drag him all over the world and do this approximately 6.2 billion times tonight, they go, okay. They trust. We trust. But when you look at the generation of children now and the previous generation, a generation or two now of children and young adults who are brought up in a world where their emotional experiences have been so difficult, because the last 2 generations have been the generations of divorce and broken homes and single parents and all of this stuff. And even for parents who are still together, the financial struggles because of both parents oftentimes having to go out and work. All of these challenges that present themselves to children today and of the last 15, 20 years, 30 years. These sort of predispose young people to a whole new set of challenges that other generations didn't have, at least not in our memory, at least not in our living memory. Absent parents, abusive parents, a childhood full of hurt, all of these inspire that deep desire for control. It's a natural reaction. It's a natural reaction. You come from some horrible situation. You don't want that situation to be that way again. So you take control. You think, but that's the trick. You think you take control. Something presents itself to you as a means of taking control, and you gravitate towards it, but you don't have control. You live in a fantasy world, and that's what the occult presents. When you think about, for example, the movie Carrie. Everybody here seen Carrie? All right. What does she have? She has an abusive mother, a young teenage girl. She has an abusive mother. She has a crowd of mean schoolmates who make fun of her. They finally dump the blood on her and the thing, and she wigs out. What does she do? She uses all of her magic occult powers to go on a wild killing spree. She takes control of the situation. The movie presents that here's somebody who's been pushed too far, who through her own powers can now take revenge and take control. That's the point. It's the whole point of the movie. The occult becomes viewed, therefore, as kind of a haven, a safe place, an escape. This is a dangerous situation to present to children and youth, young adults, who are hurting because they feel like they don't have control. It's a false idol. It's a false idol. The occult becomes a replacement for love and ultimately a replacement for the love of God. The need for God exists in each one of us. As St. Augustine so beautifully tells us, our hearts are restless and they will not find rest until they rest in Thee. God has put into us the idea, the sense, the longing for Himself, and we start looking for it from our earliest times. Start looking from it almost out of the womb. When something else comes along, when a set of life circumstances present themselves and say, well, there really isn't such thing as love, come over here and you can sort of replace it, people gravitate to it. That's why adults, when they get into the occult, stay in the occult. If you've ever met somebody deep into the occult, you've usually met somebody who's extraordinarily scarred psychologically. They're immature psychologically, they can't relate to other people, because they see those people as objects of control. They have to control those circumstances around them. Fantasy world. Psychological fantasy world. When they don't see God in the proper context, they don't understand and see God really at all. They want to take ignore the wonderful powers He has to be able to transform them. They take His miracles and they replace them with spells. The prayers that we offer to God are replaced with incantations. The wonder they should have in His material creation is replaced by a desire to manipulate that creation. And finally, the Creator, the end of this, is that the Creator is replaced by the creature. They take the things of God, they claim them to themselves, like we said at the beginning of the show, power, knowledge, all of these things. They bring them to themselves. That's what the occult holds for people. And they ultimately set themselves up as God. Here, have a bite of this fruit, and your eyes will be opened, and you will be like gods, knowing good and evil. Nothing's changed from all the way back then. Boy, Adam and Eve, they had no idea. That must have been one heck of an apple, let me tell you. So, all of this, of course, all of this psychological stuff going on in people's minds is happening in the dark recesses of these damaged psyches. And we all have damaged psyches. Everybody has a damaged psyche. Another truth of Christianity. Can't pick ourselves up. God has to do it for us. It's where you go with your damaged luggage. You got a Samsonite with your stuff hanging out. Where do you go? You go to God, He'll fix it. You go anywhere else, and your stuff's still going to be hanging out. Sin has effects in this life and the next. The church has seen this, recognized it, and taught it for 2,000 years. Sin destroys. It not only destroys eternal happiness, it destroys temporal happiness as well. That's why God lets people fall into the misery of sin, deeply into the misery of sin, so hopefully they wake up. Didn't hurt myself. They wake up and say, this is miserable. I've got to fix this. I've got to fix this situation. It's bad. I shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong. This is horrible. But if you take yourself and you stick yourself in occult practices, whatever they are, they don't have to walk around with some big witch hat on, a big cauldron. It's a mentality. It's something that you're doing, that you're controlling stuff. I don't need you, God. I don't need you. If you approach that attitude with God, your life will be miserable. Maybe not every single second of it, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will come to ruin. You will come to ruin. Your eyes have only to look to see how the wicked are repaid. No matter how good, 91st Psalm, no matter how good things may have been at some point or at this point, you will come to ruin. It's the whole point. God wants to, that's our natural path. That's our natural path. And God reaches out and says, let me save you. Let me come to earth, incarnate, take your pain, and help you up and out. The occult says, you don't have to do that. You have control. Do it yourself. Suck down the powers of the universe and cast spells and whatever. It's ridiculous. It's a lie. And if it's a lie, you know who it comes from. The only answer for healing the human heart is Jesus Christ, because the human heart is made by Him and for Him. Sin has damaged the world, and the world is in need of healing, but it cannot heal itself, has never been able to. We don't have the power to heal ourselves. It's one of the first principles of philosophy. You cannot give what you do not have. We don't have the power to heal ourselves or each other, so we can't. This is the reason that modern man hates the message of our blessed Lord, however, because it's an offensive message. It's an offensive thing to say, you are in a horrible situation and you can't get yourself out of it. You need a Savior. Modern man doesn't want to hear that. So modern man sets about trying to solve and fix the problems of the world all by himself. Socialism. It's never going to work. It's never going to work. No political system can replace God. No world order can replace God. Nothing can replace God. It's just a bunch of sick people bumping into each other in the hospital, knocking each other out of the way, getting a shot of this, getting a shot of that, taking a pill of that, and there's no doctor there. And so you're all just going to keep getting sick together and walking all over each other and killing each other. Until God is put back in His rightful place by humanity, in our hearts, nothing will ever be fixed. Nothing will ever be fixed. This is what is at the heart of Christianity. This is Christian truth. This is what our blessed Lord came to tell us. Man is wounded beyond his own ability to heal. He needs a Savior. The world utterly rejects that truth, and it has from the beginning, and it probably will until history's last act is played out. It's the people who are smart, who are mature, who are psychologically put together enough to see that truth and recognize it and reject anything that holds itself out as another truth, to be able to say, we can fix your problem. This will fix your problem. Here's a book of spells. Here's a way of seeing this. Oh, get in touch with the powers of the universe, blah, blah, blah. No, never. The occult offers the alternative view to the Christian world view, that man can control his own destiny through manipulation of elements, through communing with the dead, through secret knowledge. The more hurting someone is, the more potential the occult holds for them. You can see why. This is why I said earlier the occult is for the psychologically immature. Now, for the psychologically immature who actually did not click us off, I hope now that we've actually developed the point, you're able to sort of get that and understand that. No matter how innocent things might seem with a goofy little seance or some little silly magic potion, in the back of the mind, people continue to engage in these things, these activities, because they hold out the hope quietly in the back of the mind that maybe this magic just might work. That is not trusting God. So this is why the church says, run away from this stuff. Have nothing to do with it. This is why the occult has been around for so long, because there is that sort of continual unspoken hope that maybe this might work. Maybe it might be true. That's why God says, have nothing to do with it. Commands us to have nothing to do with it. God wishes to heal us and lift us out of the pit, but He can't do it if we don't let Him. See, this is the great spiritual battle. This is another version, another battlefield on the great spiritual warfare field, the battle of the occult. And it's the great battle for today's youth. You have to trust God. You have to trust God. Every image presented to the youth today calls them to trust in something, doesn't it? Doesn't matter what it is. Trust in something, some crazy relationship, some new kind of clothes, some new kind of car, some new show, whatever it is. Trust. Oh yeah, this will make you happy, this will make you happy. Hollywood, music videos, everything calls the youth today away from God. Everything. Look at anything except God. And eventually, every one of these things disappoints. That's why fashions change. That's why last year's awesome video game is no longer this year's awesome video game, but there's a new one. That's why last year's car model, oh God, you're driving a car from 2008 or 2009. I can't believe you're not in the 2010 model, because they always disappoint. This is the great seduction of the occult. The power in the occult is invested in you. That's the whole point. So you don't have to look outside yourself. This is why the occult is more dangerous than those other things. If you get tired of those other things, but the occult, oh, it's all about me. It's ultimately all about us anyway when you're in a state of sin, but when you look at the occult, it's like, oh, okay, I have the power to control. That's a big difference than looking out to just what are today's fashions or what is today's great, whatever, fad of, passing fad. The happiness associated with all of those things lies outside of themselves. They're dependent. People are dependent on other things for their happiness. In the occult, the great lie is that you're dependent on yourself for happiness. It's just the opposite. It offers a happiness which begins and ends inside yourself. You get to cast the spells. You get to accumulate the wisdom. You get to commune with the dead. The entire center of your universe is you when you're dealing with the occult. This makes it much more seductive than practically any other sin. It's the one that gets mentioned so frequently in Scripture. Anything having to do with the occult. Many other sins oftentimes result in lives crashing down around people. People who commit adultery or into drugs or alcohol or pornography or whatever. Those sins always seem to catch up with you in this life. Commit adultery and all of a sudden, your family's gone from you. And you go, what did I do? Or, you get into drugs or alcohol or whatever. Some sins, the ones that kind of pertain to the body, they usually have a disastrous effect in the here and now. But sins expressed through the soul, people can live in those for a lifetime. They can live in those for a lifetime. Occult practices are rooted in the belief that my soul is connected to the powers of the universe, and those powers are at my disposal whenever I want them to be. It's the great deception. When Satan tempted our blessed Lord, he tempted him in the body and the soul. He offered his body food, quickly disposed of, but he offered his soul power. The glory of the world, all these kingdoms, just bow down and worship me and I'll give you all this power. This is the temptation of the occult. The occult doesn't really tempt the body, to a degree, but it's a temptation of the soul, a temptation of the psyche, of power, knowledge. And when the young are still young, they suffer under the delusion that they have power, and they don't. They certainly do to a degree in the body, as we know, but it's the temptation to power and control over the circumstances of life where the young become weak and vulnerable. This is why being truthful and realistic with the young is always, always important. Don't ever sidestep the truth when you're talking to young people. Say it like it is. Say it like it is. Be honest. They want the truth. If they've asked the question, that means they want the answer. Always be direct. You have to be crude, but be direct with the youth when they ask a question. God has made a wonderful world which sin has marred. Kids know this. They know it instinctively, just like adults do. But being truthful about that isn't bad. As a matter of fact, it's necessary. But the other half, the greater half of the story, you also have to tell. That God has provided the means to overcome sin and the pain and the hurt that comes along. That we have the power because God has given it to us as long as we stay connected to Him to make the world better, to make my world better, my life better. Because God has given me that power. Not because I've taken it from Him like the occult, but because I've asked Him for it, and like a loving Father, He gives it to me. He wants that for me, but He wants it for me in relationship with Him. The Catholic Church has always said that it possesses the truth. And it does, because it comes from Christ. The Catholic Church possesses the truth, not incantations. We have the sacraments, not magic potions. We have access to grace, not voodoo. We have the book of scriptures, not a book of magic spells. The spirits we commune with are angels and saints, not demons in disguise. This is what it means to be Catholic. This is the proper response to the occult. Recognize the lie and make Catholicism and the truth of the faith the center of your life. We'll be right back with some questions right after this. Well, everyone, welcome back to The One True Faith, and it is the question and answer time. Hi, what's your name? Where are you from?
Joseph, I'm from Waterford.
Hello, Joseph. What's your question?
Do you think that all the evil that's coming from the government, such as with politics, can be related to the occult?
Sure, I think there's an awful lot of, certainly the same mentality. What's the mentality of the occult? That I'm in control, I have power, and I'm going to make the world the way I want to make the world. There are certainly many politicians in Washington, D.C. and other capitals around the world that think they're going to remake God's world a certain way to their own liking. So yeah, absolutely. It's certainly an occultist principle, if not actual occult practices. And who knows, that may be involved as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, sir. What's your name and where are you from?
Hi, I'm Kevin from Harrison Township.
Hi, Kevin. What's your question?
My question is this: as you were talking about the youth and the lack of God in their lives and their need for control and that leading to the occult, is there a parallel with adults? And when God is not central in their lives, and this could be for societies at large, and they want to control their destinies, they turn to politics or they turn to New Age.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Just like the young fellow's question earlier, same thing. And even into politics, New Age, I would imagine that an awful lot of people that are involved in the New Age either were or are also involved in the occult. I mean, New Age is sort of a subset of the occult, but it's all about control. It's all about I control things or I trust God. That's it. So if you use that as sort of the canvas on which all of these other things get painted, that is it. Yeah, there are absolutely people who want to control their world because they do not trust God or they don't believe in God, and they turn to other avenues. New Age, politics, certainly, socialism. I mean, socialism is sort of a political occultism. That's the whole point. So, yeah, good question.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, what's your name? Where are you from?
Stacy, Clinton Township.
Hi, Stacy. What's your question?
I understand that the fantasy part of it is the false sense of control. But isn't it true that the spells are real? Can a child cast a spell on one of my children?
That's a very kind of, that's the type of question where it sort of depends on what the circumstances are. Somebody is dabbling with evil when they're dealing with the occult. Can a spell be effective? If God allows certain things to happen because parents aren't doing their job, if parents allow a Ouija board to come into the house, for example. I was reading an article by a priest who is an exorcist who said 90% of the cases he's been an exorcist and been involved in have been as a result of Ouija boards. 90%. That's phenomenal. Maybe parents didn't know about it. Most of the time they probably do. People look at these things and think, oh, it's not a big deal, it's just a joke, it's just a game. But one of the reasons the occult is around is because sometimes it works, or at least it works to some degree that brings people, keeps people coming back. So I don't know if I can actually give you an answer to, can another kid cast a spell on one of your children and it will work. I can't give you an exact answer for that, but I can tell you there's certainly the possibility that it could be the case, absolutely. So you don't be involved in this stuff at all. I mean, how long ago was the Bible written? It was written thousands of years ago. This stuff was going on thousands of years ago because here it is in the pages right here. And what does God say? If you love me, get away from this stuff. So yeah, it can absolutely. There are certain things about the occult where these practices actually do work, or they work to some degree, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, what's your name? Where are you from?
Hi, my name is Mary. I'm from St. Josephat Parish in Detroit.
Hello, Mary.
Hi. What, if any, is the difference between those who try to use the occult to make things happen and there are some who say that if they have faith, whatever they ask of God, the health and wealth be, God has to say yes, or even Catholics who use novenas that, quote, can't fail, end quote, that God will have to say yes?
Yeah. God doesn't have to do anything. God may tie himself freely, may bind himself freely to a promise such as, I will be in my sacraments and be available and I will give grace, but God doesn't have to do that. The difference is it's the attitude with which the person approaches God or approaches whatever it is they want. Do they approach it as in they can control it, magic, socialism, health and wealth gospel, the can't fail, surefire guarantee novenas. That's all ridiculous. God wants you to approach him with a humble heart and ask. And if it's your will, how does the Our Father go? If your will be done. So absent that, everything else is kind of a false religion or a false appeal to the divine, whether it's magic in the occult or political systems or whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Frank, step up.
Yeah, hello there,
Where's
Michael.
he from?
Yes. Oh, I got a story here. A long time ago, in a far-off land of Dearborn Heights, when I was but a mere youth, my friends and I used to
This would have been
love to play.
Frankie.
Yeah, that's what my mother called me. I used to love to play Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy games. We had characters, and we had used magic, and we were involved in epic battles, and we wasted a lot of time. But nobody would ever believe that you could do some of that stuff in real life. What's different in today's world with today's youth that they could think that magic is real, that it's something that they can get involved in, as opposed to it's a fantasy and just treat it as a fantasy?
I think so many children and youth of today who have grown up in an entirely different type of world than what you grew up in or I grew up in, the lack of stability in society has. I really think if you're an adult, it's easy for you to kind of ignore that because it's not our experience as adults. When we were children, it's not really our experience. A lot of kids today are young people, not just kids, but young adults are hurting. They've grown up in a world where things are not stable, and so fantasy has more of an appeal beyond just an entertainment value, like when we were kids playing. You used to do fantasy games all the time, right? You run around as a soldier, bang, 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 and but then mom yells it's dinner, and you run on inside. And you're not running inside with your gun shooting up the dinner table, because it's a fantasy, and you know that. But I think youth today are more predisposed to want to be able to look at these things and not see the line between reality and fantasy as clearly as maybe you and other older generations may have seen it. And I think adults, when they're talking to kids about the faith and that sort of, have to understand that this is a different type of world than it was when we were growing up. And different types of ideas can get into kids' heads that probably never occurred to us. You're right. You played Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, and when the dinner whistle blew, it was over, and you were just Frankie again. All right, got it?
Yep, thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Be right back right after this. Welcome back. We're running out of time, so quick message. Avoid the occult, love Christ, defend the faith. God bless you. See you next week.